The first scream did not come from the bride. It came from the back of the cathedral, sharp and shaking, cutting through the soft music like glass breaking. Every head turned as the heavy doors slammed open. A waitress stood there, breathless, apron stained with wine and rain, her dark hair loose and wild around her face. She looked completely out of place among silk gowns and tailored suits. Her eyes locked onto the man at the altar. Leone Moretti, Mafia boss, king of the city's shadows. The woman beside him froze, her smile cracking as whispers rippled through the pews. Leone's hand tightened around the ring, his jaw hardening. He did not recognize fear often, but something in the stranger's stare made his chest tighten. She walked forward, slow and shaking, heels echoing like gunshots. When she spoke his name, it was not admiration or hatred. It was desperation, raw and burning, and it made the air feel thinner with every step she took closer to him. Security moved instantly, hands sliding beneath jackets, eyes cold and trained. The priest stepped back, face pale, as the ceremony collapsed into murmurs and chaos. The bride, Valeria De Luca, stared at Leone as if daring him to react wrong. She was powerful in her own right, raised in blood money and loyalty contracts, and humiliation was not something she forgave. The waitress reached the front before anyone stopped her. Her hands trembled as she lifted them, not in surrender, but as if holding an invisible weight. She whispered something only Leone could hear. His face drained of color. For a moment, the room vanished, replaced by a memory he had buried deep. The name, she said, was not his own. It was a secret name, one tied to fire, debt, and a promise he never intended to keep. Leone raised a hand, stopping his guards mid-step. The guests watched in stunned silence as the most feared man in the city stared at a waitress like she held his life in her palms. Before we begin, drop a comment below with your country and what time it is right now where you're watching. Whether it's sunrise in Nairobi, midnight in New York, afternoon in Canada, or evening in France, I want to know. Don't just sit back. Tell me where in the world you are. Now let's dive into the story. Valeria's voice sliced through the moment, sharp with rage and disbelief. She demanded the girl explain herself, demanded Leone finish the ceremony, demanded control. Cameras flashed, phones rose. This was not just a wedding anymore. It was a public reckoning. The waitress swallowed hard, eyes shining with unshed tears, and spoke louder this time. She accused Leone of abandoning someone who needed him, of leaving blood on innocent hands. Gasps spread like wildfire. Leone felt the weight of every stare, every whispered judgment. He had built an empire on fear and silence, yet this woman shattered it with a few trembling words. He saw now that she was young, younger than she should be to stand here, her voice cracking but unbroken. She was not reckless, she was desperate, and desperation was dangerous, especially when it carried truth. The guards waited for Leone's signal. One nod and the girl would disappear, swallowed by the same darkness he ruled. He had ended threats for less, but something held him still. Maybe it was the way her fingers curled into fists, like she was bracing for pain. Maybe it was the familiar ache in his chest, the one he ignored for years. The music had stopped. The priest said nothing. The guests barely breathed. Leone stepped down from the altar, the ring slipping from his fingers and hitting the marble floor with a soft, final sound. Valeria gasped, fury flashing across her face. This was not part of the plan. Leone stood inches from the waitress now, close enough to see dried tears on her cheeks, close enough to hear her heart racing. He asked one quiet question, one only she could hear. Her answer made his knees lock. She told him the past was no longer buried. She told him a life depended on what he chose next. The cathedral felt smaller, walls pressing in, history watching. Leone straightened and turned to face the room. Every instinct told him to crush this disruption, to protect power and pride. Instead, he did something no one expected. He took the waitress's hand. The contact sent a shock through both of them. Gasps erupted, cameras clicking like thunder. Valeria screamed his name, betrayal burning in her voice. Leone did not look back at his bride. He only looked at the girl who had walked into his wedding and stopped his world. Outside, sirens wailed faintly, growing closer. And as Leone led the waitress toward the exit, leaving his wedding behind, one truth settled heavy in his chest. Whatever came next would destroy everything he had built, or finally make him pay for it. 20 years earlier, Leone Moretti was not a king. He was a boy with bruised knuckles and borrowed shoes, standing behind the bar of a seaside diner in Portoveleno. The place smelled of salt, grease, and cheap coffee. His mother worked double shifts, smiling through exhaustion, teaching him how to survive without asking for mercy. Every night, men with hard eyes paid in cash and spoke in lowered voices. Leone learned early how silence could protect you. One stormy evening, a girl ran inside, soaked and shaking, carrying a baby wrapped in a thin towel. She was barely older than Leone, her face pale with fear. Her name was Sophia. She begged for help, whispering about men who wanted the child. Leone's mother hid her in the storage room without hesitation. That night changed everything. Leone stood guard by the door, heart pounding, holding a rusted knife he barely knew how to use. When the men came searching, Leone lied. He watched danger pass inches away. And in that moment, fear turned into resolve, carving a promise into his chest he would never forget. It was the first time he understood power always began with choosing someone else firsthand. Sophia disappeared before dawn, leaving only a folded note and a quiet thank you. Leone never saw the baby again, but the memory followed him into adulthood like a shadow. Years later, after his mother died and the diner burned down, Leone was pulled into the city's underworld. He learned violence fast, loyalty faster. By 25, his name carried weight, and fear bent rooms when he entered. Yet some nights he dreamed of rain on glass and a girl clutching a child. Meanwhile, Sophia rebuilt her life under another name. She worked wherever she could, hiding from the past that hunted her. The baby grew into a quiet boy named Marco, with dark eyes and questions she never answered. Then she told him his father was gone, not dead, just gone. When Sophia fell ill, the truth became a burden too heavy to carry alone. She wrote a letter meant for Leone, explaining everything. She never mailed it. Years passed. The boy grew into a young man who watched his mother fade. And when she died, the secret landed on his shoulders, sharp and unforgiving. It demanded answers, justice, and a confrontation time could no longer delay for anyone involved. That young man was not the waitress at the wedding. She was Marco's sister, Lena, born years after Sophia escaped. Lena learned survival the hard way, working long shifts in hotels and cafes, smiling through insults and exhaustion. She loved her brother fiercely. When Marco discovered the letter hidden inside a cracked photo frame, his world tilted. The name Leone Moretti burned on the page. Marco searched quietly, connecting dots that led him straight into danger. He confronted Leone once, alone, angry, and unprepared. He never came home. The police called it a robbery gone wrong. Lena knew better. She felt the lie settle in her bones. Grief hardened into purpose. She followed the trail her brother left behind, stepping closer to a man who ruled with fear. Lena took the waitressing job near the cathedral because powerful men ate nearby. She watched. She listened. She waited. And when she learned Leone was getting married, rage and hope collided. She did not plan to stop a wedding. She planned to demand the truth. But fate had sharper plans. It pushed her forward, fearless, carrying love, loss, and a courage she did not know existed until that cathedral door finally opened. On the morning of the wedding, Lena woke before sunrise, hands shaking as she tied her apron. She almost turned back twice. Fear whispered that she was small and disposable, but Marco's face followed her, silent and steady. The cathedral gleamed like a promise built on secrets. Inside, power gathered in silken gold. Outside, Lena waited, heart racing, replaying every word she would say. When she saw Leone step inside, older but unmistakable, something inside her snapped into clarity. This was not revenge, this was accountability. She followed him in when the doors opened, ignoring the guards, the rules, the weight of danger. Each step felt unreal, like walking into fire. When she spoke his name, she felt years of silence break apart. She expected violence. She expected to disappear. What she did not expect was recognition in his eyes, not anger, not confusion, guilt, shun heavy and immediate. In that instant, Lena understood she had already changed everything. The choice was no longer his alone, and consequences were finally awake and watching them both. History pressed closer, demanding answers, dragging buried truths into light, where no one could escape, not even men who believed themselves untouchable anymore, today, now. Back in the cathedral, as Leone led Lena away, memories crashed through him. He saw his mother's tired smile, the rain-soaked girl, the baby he helped protect. He realized the past had finally caught up. Outside, sirens grew louder, and alliances began to shift. Valeria's scream echoed behind them, promising war. Lena did not know what awaited her beyond those doors. She only knew she would not be silent again. And Leone, for the first time in decades, walked toward consequences instead of away from them. Chapter 1 had ended with shock. What followed would be blood, truth, and a reckoning that would reshape every life connected to his name. It would test loyalty, break families, and expose lies buried under wealth and fear. Choices made in shadows would demand payment in daylight. Nothing would remain untouched. Not love, not power, not the fragile hope Lena carried as tightly as grief. The story was only beginning, and escape was no longer possible for anyone involved. Every step forward sealed their fate, pulling enemies closer while the city held its breath, waiting for violence, forgiveness, or an ending no one could predict in the days ahead soon, without mercy ever. Leone did not take Lena home. He took her to a safe house overlooking the old harbor, a place built of stone and secrecy where no one spoke without permission. The drive was silent except for the hum of the engine and the distant sirens fading behind them. Lena's hand stayed clenched in her lap, knuckles white, her heart still pounding from what she had done. Every turn of the road felt like another point of no return. Leone watched her from the corner of his eye, noticing how she flinched at sudden sounds, how she kept her chin lifted despite fear. She reminded him painfully of Sophia. Inside the house, guards took positions without a word. Leone dismissed them with a sharp gesture. Alone at last, Lena finally let the anger rise. She accused him of destroying her family, of letting Marco die, and of living comfortably while others paid the price of his past. Leone did not interrupt. He listened, jaw tight, absorbing every word like a sentence already passed. When she finished, breath shaking, he told her the truth she did not expect. Marco had come to him, alive, angry, asking questions no one should ask without protection. Leone explained that Marco's death was not ordered by him, but by men who feared what the truth could unravel. A rival faction within his own organization had acted without permission. Marco had been taken, questioned, and killed before Leone could stop it. The admission was not a defense. It was a confession layered with regret. Lena felt the room spin. Part of her wanted to believe him. Another part wanted to tear the walls apart. Leone told her the wedding was not about love. It was about uniting families to prevent war. Valeria's family controlled ports, weapons, and silence. Walking away from her meant blood. A lot of it. Lena realized then the weight of what she had triggered. She was not just a girl who interrupted a wedding. She was a spark near gasoline. Leone promised her one thing. He would give her proof, names, faces, and justice, even if it destroyed him. Trust did not come easily, but Lena saw something real in his eyes, not power, guilt, and fear of losing what little humanity he had left. Meanwhile, Valeria did not cry alone. She made calls, Furious, humiliated, and dangerous, she gathered allies who saw Leone's weakness as opportunity. A boss who walked away from his wedding could walk away from loyalty. Rumors spread fast. Enemies smiled quietly. That same night, shots rang out near the harbor. Leone's safe house was compromised. Lena barely had time to react before glass shattered and guards shouted warnings. Leone pulled her down, covering her as bullets tore into walls. Fear became chaos. They escaped through a hidden tunnel Leone had not used in years. Underground, damp and dark, Lena ran until her lungs burned. She had wanted answers. Now she was hunted. Above them, the city erupted. This was the cost of truth. Leone realized too late that Valeria would never forgive him, and his enemies would never miss this chance. The war he tried to prevent had begun anyway, and Lena was now at the center of it, marked not just by blood, but by knowledge no one wanted alive. They surfaced miles away near the docks, soaked and shaking. Leone's phone buzzed non-stop. Betrayal spread faster than fire. Safe houses burned. Loyal men were killed. Lena stared at the water, realizing Marco's death was part of something much larger. She was terrified, but she was no longer powerless. She demanded to see the proof Leone promised. He gave her a flash drive, heavy as fate. On it were recordings, transactions, and names of the men responsible, including Valeria's cousin. The truth was a blade. Lena felt her grief sharpen into resolve. She would not run anymore. Leone warned her once more. This path ended in blood or silence. Lena met his gaze and told him silence had already taken enough from her. Above them, the city lights flickered like a warning. Choices had been made, lines crossed, and by morning, nothing would be the same. The waitress was gone. The girl was gone. What stood in her place was someone forged by loss, by standing beside a man who would have to choose between power and redemption before everything collapsed completely beyond repair forever. Morning came without peace. Gray light crept through the cracked windows of the dockside warehouse where Leone hid Lena before dawn. The air smelled of oil and salt, and every sound made Lena tense. She had not slept. Images of Marco, of the cathedral, of bullets tearing through walls replayed in her mind like a punishment. Leone watched the city from a high window, phone pressed to his ear, issuing orders in a low voice. Each call stripped away another layer of control he once held. Allies hesitated. Rivals tested borders. Valeria's name moved through conversations like a blade. When Leone finally turned, Lena saw exhaustion on his face, deep and honest. He told her the city was splitting. Men were choosing sides. The marriage had been a treaty. Without it, violence would decide everything. Lena asked why he was still protecting her. Leone answered with the truth he had avoided for decades, because he failed once before, and he would not fail again. That promise did not comfort her. It frightened her more than any threat. It meant staying close to him was dangerous. It also meant walking away would leave her brother's death unresolved forever. Leone arranged a meeting that afternoon with an old contact named Raphael, a man who sold information the way others sold blood. The meeting place was a crowded market near the river, chosen for witnesses and noise. Lena wore borrowed clothes and kept her head down, but she felt eyes on her everywhere. Raphael confirmed what Leone feared. Valeria had already moved. She framed Leone as unstable, unfit to lead. She spread the story that the waitress was a plant, a weakness to exploit. Worse, she ordered Lena taken alive. The market suddenly felt smaller. Leone slipped Lena a knife and told her to stay close. Shots rang out before the meeting ended. People screamed. Stalls overturned. Leone dragged Lena through the chaos, returning fire with brutal precision. They escaped barely, but Raphael did not. The cost of truth grew heavier. As they ran, Lena realized this world did not care about innocence, only leverage. And she was now leverage, not just to hurt Leone, but to control him. The realization hardened her resolve. If she was a target, she would decide how she was used. That night, Leone brought Lena to another location, this one quieter, higher, overlooking the city like a judge. He finally showed her the full scope of his world: maps, ledgers, names tied to crimes that stretched back decades. He explained how Valeria's family had slowly infiltrated his operation, how Marco's questions threatened to expose their shared corruption. Lena listened, anger burning cold and steady. She asked Leone why he did not walk away long ago. He admitted he liked the power, he liked the control. He told her redemption was not a clean road. It was paid for in losses. Lena did not forgive him, but she saw his honesty. She made a decision then that surprised them both. She would not disappear. She would testify, leak the evidence, burn everything if needed. Leone warned her that doing so would put a target on her forever. Lena replied that living in fear was not living at all. Her brother deserved more than silence. That night, they formed a fragile alliance, not of love, not yet, but of shared purpose, sharpened by pain. Valeria watched from a distance as reports came in. Leone was slipping. The girl was still alive. Rage simmered beneath her calm exterior. She ordered pressure applied everywhere. Businesses loyal to Leone were hit. Families were threatened. She made sure Leone knew the price of defiance. At the same time, she sent a message to Lena, an invitation disguised as mercy. Valeria offered answers. She offered safety. She offered truth. Leone wanted to refuse immediately. It was a trap. Lena knew it too. But she also knew Valeria held pieces of the puzzle Leone never would. Marco's final hours. The real chain of command. The full story. Lena chose to go. Alone. Leone argued until his voice broke, until fear showed through his control. Lena stood firm. This was her fight. Leone agreed on one condition. If anything went wrong, he would burn the city down to get her back. Lena did not doubt him. That scared her more than comforted her. The meeting was set for the next evening. As Lena prepared, she stood by the window and watched the city glow beneath her. Somewhere below, people laughed, unaware of the war tightening its grip. She thought of her mother, of Marco, of the girl she was before walking into that cathedral. That version of her was gone. In her place stood someone forged by loss and choice. Leone joined her, silent, heavy with unspoken emotion. For a brief moment, their reflections overlapped in the glass. Two damaged souls standing at the edge of something irreversible. Tomorrow would bring truth or death, maybe both. Lena did not pray. She did not hope. She simply promised herself she would not back down again. Whatever came next would change everything, and this time she would meet it standing, eyes open, unafraid of the cost. The restaurant Valeria chose sat on a cliff above the sea, glass walls glowing gold as the sun fell behind the water. It looked peaceful, almost gentle, which made Lena's skin prickle the moment she stepped inside. Music hummed softly, candles flickered, too calm, too controlled. Valeria waited at a corner table dressed in black, her posture flawless, her expression unreadable. She smiled as Lena approached, the kind of smile meant to disarm before it destroyed. Valeria spoke first, praising Lena's courage, her loyalty to family, her nerve. Lena did not sit until she was invited. When she did, Valeria placed a thin folder on the table and slid it forward. Inside were photos. Marco bound to a chair. Marco bleeding. Marco terrified but alive in the last image. Lena's breath caught painfully. Valeria told her the truth slowly, desavoring every word. Marco was not meant to die. He was meant to be leverage. But someone panicked. Someone pulled the trigger too soon. Valeria said his name without hesitation. Her cousin. She claimed Leone tried to stop it, but leadership was about control, and Leone had lost his. The blame was shared. The guilt was shared. And now, Valeria said, the future could be shared too. Valeria made her offer clear. Lena would hand over the flash drive. She would disappear quietly. In return, Valeria would kill her cousin publicly and spare Leone a slow collapse. The city would stabilize. Blood would stop spilling. Lena listened without interrupting, grief burning behind her eyes. Valeria leaned closer, lowering her voice. She told Lena that if she refused, Leone would die slowly, piece by piece. Everyone loyal to him would suffer. And Lena would watch from a cage. The threat was not loud, it was precise. Lena realized then that Valeria was not acting out of heartbreak. This was strategy, power reshaped through humiliation. Lena stood when Valeria finished. She thanked her for the truth. Then she told Valeria she would think about it. Outside, the wind off the sea felt sharp and cold. Lena's hands shook as she walked away. She did not know yet what she would choose. She only knew there was no clean path left. Leone watched the restaurant from a distance, rage coiled tight inside him. He saw Lena leave unharmed and allowed himself one breath. When she returned, her silence told him everything. They drove without speaking until the city lights blurred past them. Lena finally told him about Valeria's offer. Leone laughed once, bitter and hollow. He admitted Valeria would keep her word. She always did when it benefited her. He also admitted he would deserve whatever came. Lena surprised him then. She said she would not trade one life for another. Marco would not want that. Leone argued. He said this war would swallow everything. Lena said it already had. She told him she would release the evidence. All of it. Tonight. Let the city burn if it had to. Leone looked at her like he was seeing her clearly for the first time. Not a waitress, not a victim, a force. He realized his feelings were no longer just guilt or obligation. They were something deeper and far more dangerous. Respect. They moved quickly, phones destroyed, routes changed. Lena uploaded copies of the files to multiple channels, sending them to journalists, law enforcement, and rivals alike. By dawn, the city woke to chaos. Headlines exploded, names fell, raids began. Valeria's cousin was arrested before noon. Valeria herself vanished. Leone's empire crumbled in real time. Some men fled. Others turned on each other. Sirens became the city's new heartbeat. Leone and Lena watched from a high vantage point as everything collapsed. Lena cried quietly, not from fear but from release. The truth was out. Marco's death was no longer buried. Leone felt something unfamiliar, relief mixed with dread. He had finally chosen the right thing. It had cost him everything. By nightfall, they knew Valeria would strike back. There would be one final move, one last attempt to regain control. Lena asked Leone if he regretted leaving the altar. He answered without hesitation. Number. For the first time in his life, the future felt honest. Dangerous. But honest. They prepared for what was coming, standing side by side, no longer bound by secrets. The war was not over. But the story had shifted. Power no longer sat comfortably in the shadows. It was exposed, bleeding, and afraid. And for the first time, Lena felt something close to peace, even if it would not last long. The city did not sleep that night. Helicopters cut across the sky, blue lights painting rooftops in restless motion. Leone and Lena moved between safe locations, never staying longer than an hour. Every street felt watched, every shadow felt loaded. Lena's phone buzzed nonstop with messages from strangers, journalists, people thanking her, people threatening her. The weight of what she had done pressed down hard. Truth was not gentle. It did not arrive with comfort. It arrived with consequences. Leone guided her calmly, efficiently, like a man who had lived in collapsing worlds before. But Lena noticed the change in him. He no longer spoke of rebuilding. He spoke only of protecting her and finishing what had started. At one abandoned apartment, Leone finally told her Valeria would not run forever. Pride would not allow it. Valeria would want the final word, the final wound. Lena asked what that would look like. Leone answered quietly. A trap. One meant for both of them. And he already knew where it would be set. The place was the old Moretti estate on the hills, abandoned since Leone's mother died. Valeria knew its meaning. She knew memories weakened people. As they prepared, Leone showed Lena a hidden room beneath the estate, one even his closest men never knew about. Inside were files older than his empire, a proof of crimes that could bury entire families, insurance built from paranoia and regret. Lena realized Leone had never trusted power completely. He had always planned for collapse. She asked why he never used it before. Leone admitted he was afraid of becoming nothing, afraid of facing what he had done. Lena told him being nothing was better than being hollow. The words stayed with him. Before dawn, Leone sent a message to Valeria. One line, one location, one promise. He would come alone. Valeria responded minutes later. So would she. Lies layered over certainty. Lena knew she would not be left behind. She refused to be protected into silence again. Leone did not argue this time. They arrived at the estate as the sky bled into morning. The house stood empty and massive, windows dark like watching eyes. Inside, dust-coated furniture frozen in time. Lena felt history pressing close. Valeria was already there, seated calmly in the dining hall, dressed in white this time, as if mocking the wedding that never finished. Armed men waited in the shadows. Leone stepped forward without fear. Valeria clapped slowly, congratulating them on the chaos they caused. She blamed Lena openly, a nobody who thought truth mattered more than order. Lena did not flinch. She told Valeria Marco's name, said it clearly, said it loudly. The sound shifted the room. Valeria's smile thinned. Leone placed the final evidence on the table. Everything. Names, dates, proof that would end Valeria's family completely. He offered her a choice: walk away and disappear, or watch it all burn publicly. Valeria laughed. Then she nodded, and the shooting began. Gunfire shattered the estate, splintering walls and memories alike. Lena dropped instinctively, crawling as chaos erupted. Leone moved like muscle memory, pulling her to cover, firing back with controlled fury. Men fell. Glass exploded. Smoke filled the hall. Valeria escaped through a side passage as Leone expected. He chased her while Lena followed, refusing to be left behind. They cornered Valeria in the garden as the sun rose behind her. Blood streaked her arm. Her eyes burned with hatred. She aimed at Lena without hesitation. Leone stepped in front of the bullet. It tore through his shoulder. He fell hard. Lena screamed and fired, hitting Valeria in the leg. She collapsed, screaming, the mask finally gone. Sirens grew louder. Law enforcement swarmed the hills. The war ended not with control, but with exposure. As Valeria was dragged away, she locked eyes with Lena and promised this was not over. Lena believed her. But some endings did not need to be clean to be final. Leone bled heavily, slipping in and out of consciousness as Lena pressed her hands to his wound. He looked at her and smiled faintly. He told her he was proud of her. The words broke something open in her chest. Help arrived moments later. As Leone was taken away, Lena stood alone in the garden, shaking, alive, changed. The waitress who walked into a wedding was gone forever. In her place stood someone who had faced power, grief, and fear and did not look away. And the story was not finished yet, but it was finally honest. Leone woke to white light and the steady rhythm of machines. The smell of antiseptic burned his nose, sharp and unforgiving. For a moment he thought he was dead. Then pain flooded back, anchoring him to the present. His shoulder throbbed, wrapped tight and heavy. Voices murmured nearby, urgent but controlled. When he turned his head, Lena was there, sitting stiff in a plastic chair, eyes red, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles had gone pale. Relief washed over her face when she saw his eyes open. She stood too fast, almost losing balance, and laughed through a breath that sounded close to a sob. She told him he had been unconscious for 2 days. Valeria was in custody, so were many others. The city was still burning, but in a different way now. Leone tried to speak. His throat was dry, his voice rough, but he managed her name. Hearing it grounded him. Lena told him not to move, not to be stubborn. He smiled faintly. Even broken, he was still dangerous. But for the first time, he felt something like peace settle in his chest. Outside the hospital room, the world was changing fast. News screens replayed footage of arrests, seizures, protests, and grieving families finally given answers. Leone's name filled headlines, no longer wrapped in mystery, but exposed in full. Some called him a monster. Others called him a man who finally chose to burn the throne instead of guarding it. Law enforcement wanted him awake and strong enough to talk. Lawyers circled like birds, offering deals, threats, silence. Lena sat through it all, refusing to leave. She learned quickly how power shifted when fear was replaced by daylight. People who once ignored her now asked for statements. Her words mattered. That scared her more than any gun. Leone told her she could walk away now. He would not blame her. He had nothing left to offer but consequences. Lena shook her head. She told him she had already lost too much to disappear again. If this story ended, it would end honestly. Together or not at all. Leone closed his eyes, feeling something tighten painfully in his chest. Not guilt this time. Gratitude. Days later, Leone was moved into custody under guard. The cell was clean, quiet, and final. He signed papers with steady hands, accepting responsibility for everything he could. He did not bargain for freedom, only for protection for Lena, and for Marco's case to be reopened publicly. The request surprised everyone. It slowed proceedings. And it forced attention back to the victims instead of the empire. Lena watched from behind glass as Leone was led away, chains light but symbolic. She felt the ache of something unfinished. They had not spoken of feelings, not directly. Everything between them lived in looks and silences. As the door closed, Leone turned once. He held her gaze, long and steady, and nodded. It was not goodbye. It was acknowledgement. Lena pressed her palm to the glass, grounding herself. She was no longer afraid of being seen. She was afraid of wasting what this truth had cost. The trial consumed the city. Weeks passed. Testimonies spilled out in waves. Lena took the stand, voice steady despite the weight. She spoke about Marco, about the letter, about the wedding, about walking into power with nothing but truth and refusing to be erased. The courtroom listened. Some cried, some looked away. Valeria appeared colder than ever, her eyes sharp and empty. When Lena finished, she did not look at Valeria. She looked at Leone. He met her gaze without flinching. For the first time, the distance between them felt measured, not endless. The verdicts rolled in slowly. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Networks collapsed. Names lost meaning. The city exhaled in disbelief. Lena walked out of the courthouse into sunlight that felt different than before. Lighter, but not simple. Justice was not a miracle. It was work, and scars remained. That evening, Lena returned to the harbor alone. The water moved quietly, reflecting city lights like broken stars. She thought of her mother, of Marco, of the girl she used to be, counting tips and swallowing insults. She felt older now, sharper, but also stronger. Her phone buzzed. It's a message from Leone's lawyer. He would be transferred soon, long-term. The sentence would be heavy, but he was alive, and he had kept his word. Lena sat on the edge of the pier and let herself cry fully for the first time since the cathedral. Not from fear or rage, from release. The waitress who stopped a wedding had changed everything, but more importantly, she had changed herself. And whatever came next, it would be chosen. Not forced, not silent. Chosen with eyes open and a voice that would not break again. Months passed, and the city learned how to breathe again. Not easily, not fully, but differently. Buildings still stood where power once hid, yet their windows felt exposed now, like secrets peeled away. Lena moved through her days with a new kind of awareness. She no longer worked as a waitress. That life felt distant, like a costume she once wore to survive. She worked with investigators and advocacy groups, helping other families untangle stories buried by fear and money. Each name she helped surface felt like placing a stone on Marco's grave, building something solid out of loss. Some nights exhaustion hit her hard, and she wondered if she had traded one kind of cage for another. But every morning, she chose to keep going. Her voice mattered now, not because she was loud, but because she was honest. The city recognized her in small ways. A nod, a thank you, sometimes a look of anger. Truth never pleased everyone. Lena accepted that. What mattered was that she no longer felt invisible. Leone lived behind walls and schedules, his world reduced to measured steps and routine. Prison stripped him of power, but not reflection. He spent long hours writing letters he never sent, replaying moments he could not undo. He followed the news through old newspapers, reading about trials, reforms, and quiet shifts in leadership across the city. He saw Lena's name occasionally, quoted in articles, never dramatic, always precise. It filled him with a strange mix of pride and sorrow. He requested no special treatment, spoke only when required, and avoided influence where he could. Guards noticed he caused no trouble. In truth, the hardest battles happened in silence. Leone learned how loud regret could be. One afternoon, he received a message that Lena had requested a visit. The news hit him harder than any verdict. He prepared himself carefully, choosing calm over expectation. When she entered the visiting room, older, steadier, he realized she had grown past the moment that tied them together. And that was exactly how it should be. Their meeting was quiet. No apologies, no grand declarations. They spoke about the city, about Marco, about the people who still needed help. Lena told him she had used the settlement money to start a foundation in her brother's name. Leone listened, eyes soft, absorbing every word like a gift he had not earned. He told her he did not expect forgiveness. Lena said she was not there to give it. She was there to acknowledge the truth, that he chose differently when it mattered most. That choice did not erase the past, but it changed the ending. Leone nodded, accepting the limits of redemption. Before she left, Lena placed her hand briefly against the glass. Leone mirrored the gesture. The moment held no romance, only respect and understanding. As she walked away, Leone felt something settle inside him. Not freedom, but peace, the kind that comes from knowing the damage will not continue through you. Outside, Lena stood in the open air and let the sun warm her face. She realized she no longer defined herself by what she had lost. She was building something new, something fragile but real. Invitations came from other cities, other countries, asking her to speak, to help, to advise. She accepted some, declined others. Balance mattered now. On one trip, she stood in a small community hall, telling her story to people who listened with tears and clenched hands. She spoke simply, about walking into fear, about choosing truth even when it costs you everything. She did not paint herself as brave. She described herself as tired of silence. So the audience understood. Afterward, a young woman approached her, eyes wide, whispering thanks. In that moment, Lena felt the ripple of change move outward, quiet but unstoppable. Marco's name lived on not in headlines, but in courage passed forward. That night, Lena returned to the harbor where it all felt like it had begun. The water moved steadily, unchanged by human drama. She breathed deeply, feeling grounded in her own body, her own choices. Her phone buzzed with a message confirming final sentencing dates. Closure approached, slow and heavy. Lena did not dread it. She welcomed it. Some stories needed an ending to truly become something else. She looked out over the city lights and allowed herself a small smile. The past had tried to crush her. It failed. She had stopped a wedding and unraveled an empire, not through force, but through refusal to disappear. And as the tide shifted beneath the pier, Lena understood something clearly for the first time. Change did not always arrive with noise. Sometimes it arrived when one underestimated person stepped forward and said enough. The trial's final week arrived like a storm. The courthouse buzzed with tension, cameras flashing, whispers cutting through the air like knives. Leone sat in the defendant's box, his shoulder healed but the weight of months pressing down. Valeria's family was present, flanked by lawyers and security, their expressions unreadable masks. The judge entered, the gavel heavy with authority. Lena sat in the gallery, heart steady but every nerve alert. She had prepared for this moment, rehearsed every fact, every piece of evidence she would present if called, but nothing could prepare her for the intensity of the room. Leone met her gaze briefly. A nod, a silent promise. They were in this together, though neither spoke the words aloud. The air shifted as the prosecutor laid out charges, crimes traced back decades, by exposing networks of corruption, betrayal, and violence. Each word landed like a hammer blow. Valeria's family flinched. Whispers became murmurs. Lena felt the full weight of truth pressing forward, relentless, unyielding. When Lena was called to testify, she rose with calm precision. The room went silent. Her voice did not waver as she recounted Marco's story, the letters, the hidden truths, and her own journey from fear to action. She told them about the cathedral, the wedding, the moment she stepped forward and refused to be silenced. Every eye followed her, some with disbelief, some with sympathy, others with fear. Valeria's expression darkened, corners of her mouth twitching with frustration and anger. Leone listened, jaw tight, heart beating rapidly. He felt pride but also dread, because Lena's bravery exposed not only the guilty, but everyone complicit in silence. By the time she finished, she had held the room in her hands. No exaggeration, no theatrics, only truth. And in truth, power shifted. The courtroom erupted during the closing statements. Leone's lawyers spoke methodically, reinforcing responsibility, showing remorse, and proving the chain of betrayal that led to Marco's death. Valeria's lawyers tried to twist narratives, suggesting manipulation, but the evidence was overwhelming. Lena's testimony and the flash drives had become unassailable proof. Leone remained silent, listening to every word, every accusation and admission. He did not flinch. He did not argue. He accepted what was coming. Outside the courthouse, the city waited with bated breath. Reporters, onlookers, and ordinary citizens felt the tension, sensing that this trial was more than legal. It was moral reckoning. And in those hours, Leone and Lena became symbols of exposure and justice, whether they wanted it or not. The verdicts came late in the evening. Guilty, guilty, guilty. One by one, the corrupt fell under the weight of accountability. Leone's name, once feared, now carried a different kind of weight, one of recognition for choosing action over avoidance. Valeria's family crumbled, power fractured, influence scattered. Outside, Lena watched the city in quiet awe. It was not perfect. Chaos remained. Some families retaliated. Some men fled. But the order that had been built on fear was gone, replaced by something raw and honest. Leone met her gaze briefly before being led away to begin his sentence, a heavy but deserved term. He nodded, a simple, human gesture, and for once, words were unnecessary. Lena had fought, endured, and changed history. Later that night, Lena returned to the cathedral steps where her journey had begun. The air smelled of rain, distant and soft, and the streets were quiet. She thought of Marco, of Leone, of the lives fractured and remade. Every step felt heavier yet freer. She understood fully that bravery had costs, and survival alone was no longer enough. She had altered the course of power, of crime, and of hearts. And in that heavy realization she felt something new, the possibility of peace, fragile but attainable. The city slept uneasily beneath her, but she did not. She would not. She was awake now, eyes open, voice steady, and whatever came next would be met fully, without fear, without silence, and without compromise. This was the moment before the final reckoning, where consequences, choices, and redemption would collide in ways no one could ignore. The morning of Leone's transfer arrived under a pale gray sky. Rain had fallen overnight, leaving the streets slick and reflective, mirroring the fractured city. Lena stood on the courthouse steps, waiting. the flash drive that had started everything secured in her coat. She had rehearsed what she would do, what she would say, and how she would face the final chapter. Leone emerged from the building, flanked by guards, his shoulders straight, eyes clear, and the faintest trace of a smile that only she could recognize. For a long moment they simply looked at each other. No words, no excuses, just acknowledgement. The chaos, the blood, the secrets, they had survived it together. She walked toward him, slow but steady, refusing to let fear or doubt dictate her steps. The city seemed to pause. Sirens and chatter faded into the background. It was just them, standing on the threshold of everything they had fought for and everything they had lost. Leone reached her first. His hand brushed hers briefly, small, unceremonious, but it carried decades of regret, protection, and unspoken gratitude. Lena did not pull away. She had lived through loss, betrayal, and exposure. She understood the weight of this touch, the acknowledgement of shared survival. Guards called him forward, but he lingered, whispering one line only she could hear. "You've changed everything." Lena nodded, voice steady but filled with emotion. "We changed it together." Then he was gone, walking toward the van that would take him to his sentence, a final chapter of containment for a man who had once ruled the city from the shadows. She watched him go, understanding that love, power, and loyalty were rarely neat or simple, but truth could be. And in that truth there was a fragile, unshakable freedom. The city's reaction was immediate. News spread like wildfire. Leone's empire was dismantled. Valeria and her faction were in custody, and the public could see every link, every crime, and every hidden transaction. Lena's role became known not as a rebel or a meddler, but as a catalyst for justice. Interviews, articles, and reports followed, painting her as a survivor who refused to disappear, a young woman who turned tragedy into accountability. Yet Lena avoided the spotlight. She moved quietly, focusing on the foundation in Marco's name, helping families silenced by corruption. Every name she uncovered, every truth she brought into daylight, felt like a small victory. She had started as a waitress who stepped into chaos, and she ended as a force who reshaped it. The city slowly learned that courage could outshine fear, that action could break the longest shadows. Evenings at the harbor became her sanctuary. She would stand on the pier where water met stone, watching the tide and reflecting on the journey. Leone's absence weighed on her, but she carried no bitterness. Instead, she felt a profound understanding. Some people could not be saved from themselves, but they could be held accountable. She remembered Marco's laugh, the cathedral doors, the bullet-riddled estate, and the city's awakening. Every memory was a reminder of why she acted, why she refused silence, and why she had to keep going. For herself, for her brother, for the countless lives affected by greed, fear, and silence. The harbor, the city, the sky. They felt quieter, not innocent, but cleansed enough for her to breathe. Months later, Leone's sentence neared its end of confinement under parole. He had been reduced in power but refined in character, learning patience and humility through loss and reflection. Lena received his first message in years. A simple line, no explanation, no pleading, just acknowledgement. "Thank you." She stared at the words, feeling the weight of history and survival in 3 small words. For Lena, it was enough. The story that began with a wedding disrupted by fear and desperation had ended not with vengeance, but with accountability, justice, and a hard-earned peace. She turned back toward the harbor, toward the city lights, toward the life she had chosen to live fully awake. The water reflected everything, the darkness, the truth, the storms endured, and the calm finally earned. And in that reflection, Lena smiled, knowing that the waitress who had stopped a Mafia wedding had rewritten destiny itself. She was no longer running. She was home. The city would remember the chaos. They would remember Leone, Valeria, and the empire that crumbled. But more importantly, They would remember Lena, the girl who stepped into a cathedral and refused to disappear. And though scars remained, hearts had changed, power had shifted, and justice had found its voice. In the quiet after the storm, she finally understood. Survival was not the end. Courage was not the end. Truth was the end. And for the first time in years, Lena let herself breathe fully. Letting the past rest and the future begin, the story was over. Yet in its ending, a new chapter of life awaited, honest, unshakable, and entirely her own.